Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me. It's a hard act to follow. Mike managed to cram in a lot of information and very interesting analysis into his 12 minutes. So I'm going to come from almost the opposite perspective. I'm going to try to see what can we do about these inequalities, and I'm going to share a presentation, I hope, and see if it can come up. So I was given a topic, and the topic was the balance of fairness enhancing policies and efficiency enhancing policies in reducing inequality. So this is a topic that has the characteristics of many topics here in China. It's this somehow when things are translated from Chinese, and I had the pleasure now of learning Chinese, and the elegance that Chinese have in making these kind of titles in Chinese. When they come over into English, they somehow lose all that elegance. But I tried to summarize it in balancing fairness and efficiencies in reducing inequalities. And so that's I'm going to try to talk about this balance. And one of the points I'm going to try to make is that very often efficiency and fairness are actually not contradictory, and that they are often actually very much in line and complement each other. So I'm going to approach it from the perspective of what I call a recovering academic. So I've spent most of my life as an academic, but I have had two episodes of trying to work in policy, and that's what I'm doing now. And I think it's from that experience that I'm going to try to think about that issue of fairness and efficiency. So and as you probably, or the one who was observant would have noticed, I changed inequality to inequalities, and this is one thing that anyone who works on inequality, particularly in practice, is that this one inequality seldom comes alone. They often come with others. So wealth inequality comes with income inequality, access to health, and maybe education. And I think this is very important when we think about inequality, that we cannot address them in isolation. And also when we manage to get traction on one inequality, we actually may be able to move whole clusters of inequality. And I think that's for someone who is trying to think about this in the context, particularly of infrastructure and so on. This is a very important insight. The second lesson is something that I come to very much from my experience at the EBRD, which is that we talk a lot about equality of outcome, and we talk about equality of opportunity, and of course both matter a lot. But from my experience, that equality opportunity is much easier to get consensus around, and much easier to translate into something that you can sort of operationally address in an organization. And the way I think about it, or my own experience, was that I came to EBRD. I spent 9 years actually at EBRD, and from the very beginning, I had this ambition to try to make that organization much more concerned about inequality and distributional outcomes, and also gender equality, having seen how the transition process particularly in Eastern Europe had increasingly been plagued by issues around inequality, and how that was undermining the kind of legitimacy of the process. But it was very difficult to get support for these issues in the board, because there was the view that this would somehow undermining the focus of the organization, and making the mandate less precise. But what really changed things was when the bank was asked to go into Turkey, and then of course the Middle East and North Africa in the Arab Spring. that experience, and when we saw that 80% of women were outside the formal labor force, and that the fact that there was so much inequality of opportunity was such a profound impression, and that really carried the way and changed the whole way that the bank operated and saw the issue of inequality. And there were two sort of sets of arguments around equality of opportunity. There was one set that was around the efficiency argument, and there was one set that was around the sort of political economy, the need that people were not part of the political process, and they had been left out of a lot of the political changes that were happening. Both arguments are important, but what really made a difference in that case was the equality of opportunity as a waste of resources, and the fact that so many people did not have an opportunity to realize their potential for whatever reason, or their gender, where they were born, who their parents were, and all those things. That really carried the way, and that was transformed that organization from an institution that didn't care about equality to one that had now more than 50% of the projects have a measurable component of inequality, or of equality, of inclusion it's called, but it's really about equality of opportunity. So again, the efficiency argument is not the only reason why you should care about the equality of opportunity, but it's one that is much easier to measure. We have a lot of a very good way of measuring that, and that is something that is important. Inclusion, as I mentioned, is really a multidimensional concept. And it's of course both about inclusion in terms of outcome and opportunity, but perhaps even more so, and something that I find increasingly important, is the inclusion in political and social processes. And that, in order to move political change and transformational processes, that aspect is very important. I mentioned the sort of political economy argument, but that is important, but it's really about how people feel that they participate. And I think when we talk about the opportunities from digital technologies, this is going to be extremely important. I think that the participation and ownership is really what can affect the sense of fairness and willingness to accept maybe unavoidable, or maybe in some cases even desirable, inequalities of outcome and opportunity. So these are 5 lessons that I have as a recovering academic. So of course, when you introduce digital technologies into this, you open up new inequalities, and you may also reinforce existing ones. You have geographic location, you have digital literacy varying a lot, particularly across developing countries. You have the carbon footprint that where you are in the value chain may be very different in terms of how you digital technology works, or your data center, or you are somewhere else. And exclusion also varies a lot across countries and within organizations. So the digital technology may not necessarily reduce technologies, but it also unleashes new opportunities. So digital infrastructure can be absolutely transformational. And what is very important, and we have seen in so many cases, that it's not path dependent. It allows you to leapfrog, and there's many examples. I'll come to them in a minute. You can invest in human capital to encourage that transformation. You can improve access to health education in a way that you didn't think was possible before. You can, and this is what I want to really emphasize, is to increase the sense of participation in social political processes in a way that you can really change societies. Give you 2 or 3 examples. We just, as AIIB, funded a satellite system in Indonesia. So those who know, Indonesia is the 4th largest country in terms of population in the world, 17,000 islands. This is a project that through satellite brings broadband to 45 million new individual beneficiaries, to number of schools, to 47,000 local villages, to health centers. These investments can be truly transformational. This was a public partnership. This an initiative that's very familiar to the hosts of the Luohan Academy, the Taobao villages in China, cooperation between Alibaba and the World Bank, trying to use digital technologies to bridge the income gap between urban and rural villages, encouraging online vendors to use e-commerce to activate commerce in villages in China, starting in Zhejiang province. Now there are 5,000 villages across 25 provinces in China. Digital infrastructure, basic digital skills, these have really changed the households. So, and one example, here's another maybe trivial example, but still very influential example. And I think this shows also how, particularly in digital health, we can see a lot of improvements in terms of access. So this is that 2/3 of medical students in Pakistan are females, and half of those are females graduates stop working after getting their getting their degrees, and through this initiative they can now serve many poor households through digital technology. This is a slide. Just I was going to say a little bit about the role of data. Data is incredibly changing the picture. Of course, data. People on this call has worked a lot on data, and the data changes everything as the public goods of data, how that can change the nature of development. But it requires regulation to ensure fairness and efficiency. We need to make sure that we protect the small people in this process. Multilateral developments can help try to get the efficiency and fairness working in this. So equality of opportunity is efficient. Strict equality of outcome probably not efficient, but fairness is still very important. Digital infrastructure can open new and reinforce old inequalities, but also unleash extraordinary new opportunities. Perhaps great. Yeah. Thank you.